Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt. Beautiful, wealthy, sexy, charismatic. How did Shakespeare represent her on stage? Well, he'd have looked through his copy of Sir Thomas North's translation of Plutarch's Life of Antony, like the one in front of me here on the table, and his eye would have been caught by a little marginal note on the left, which says, "The wonderful sumptuousness of Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, going unto Antonius at Cydnus." This is how the passage in Plutarch goes. This is a moment where we can really see Shakespeare in the act of composition. I'm going to read the passage as he would have done in Plutarch, and then see what he made of it. "She took her barge in the river of Cydnus, the poop whereof was of gold, the sails of purple, and the oars of silver, which kept stroke in rowing after the sound of the music of flute, oboes, cithens, viols, and such other instruments as they played upon in the barge. And now for the person of herself, she was laid under a pavilion of cloth of gold of tissue, apparelled and attired like the goddess Venus commonly drawn in picture, and hard by her, on either hand of her, pretty fair boys, apparelled as painters do set forth God Cupid, with little fans in their hands, with the which they fanned wind upon her. Her ladies and gentlewomen also, the fairest of them, were apparelled like the nymphs Nereides, which are the mermaids of the waters, and like the Graces, some steering the helm, others tending the tackle and ropes of the barge, out of the which there came a wonderful passing sweet savour of perfumes, that perfumed the wharf side, pestered with innumerable multitudes of people. Some of them followed the barge all along the river side. Others also ran out of the city to see her coming in, so that in the end there ran such multitudes of people, one after another, to see her, that Antony was left post alone in the marketplace, in his imperial seat, to give audience." Well, Shakespeare must have thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to dramatise that scene of the thousands of people running across the riverside and this amazing, sumptuous barge in which Cleopatra appears to Antony in all her glory. But of course, he couldn't do that. This wasn't the world of the modern musical theatre with high-tech effects, where the producer could just say, "Bring on that barge." So Shakespeare had to do it differently. He did it with poetry. He wrote for a bare stage and minimal props, furnishings, scenery, but maximal imagination in the language. So he took this passage from Plutarch, put it in the mouth of Antony's great friend Enobarbus, and made it into a beautiful piece of poetry. But as we read it, let's notice how Shakespeare adds to his source, how he turns prose into poetry. "The barge she sat in, like a burnished throne, burned on the water. The poop was beaten gold, purple the sails, and so perfumed that the winds were lovesick with them. The oars were silver, which to the tune of flutes kept stroke, and made the water which they beat to follow faster, as amorous of their strokes." So you've got all the same details, but as well as having the particular elements, the golden poop, the perfumes, the silver oars, you've got the idea that even the winds and the waters fall in love with Cleopatra. The very elements of the earth falling in love with her. She's so charismatic. That's Shakespeare's idea. It's not in Plutarch. For her own person, it beggared all description. She did lie in her pavilion, cloth of gold of tissue, picturing that Venus, where we see the fancy outwork nature. On each side her stood pretty dimpled boys like smiling cupids, with divers coloured fans, whose winds did seem to glow the delicate cheeks which they did cool, and what they undid did. So once again, Shakespeare's taken the specific image from his source, the fact that she's in a pavilion of cloth of gold made out of tissue, and that she's dressed like the goddess Venus. But he's up to the ante. He says that she's outdoing a picture of Venus, that no description, no picture could possibly do justice to her. But of course, Shakespeare's poetic description is doing justice to her. "Oh, rare for Antony," says Enobarbus' friend Agrippa, who he's talking to. Then Enobarbus continues, "Her gentlewomen, like the Nereides, so many mermaids, tended her in the eyes, and made their bends adornings. At the helm a seeming mermaid steers. The silken tackles swell with the touches of those flower-soft hands that yearly frame the office. From the barge a strange invisible perfume hits the scents of the adjacent wharfs." So once again, the details taken from Plutarch, but an extraordinary image added where even the tackle of the barge seems to swell with the touch of the hands of the mermaid. It's very, very erotic. "The city cast her people out upon her, and Antony, enthroned in the marketplace, did sit alone, whistling to the air, which but for vacancy had gone to gaze on Cleopatra too, and made a gap in nature." So again, the closing image is of Antony left alone in the marketplace. But whereas in Plutarch, it's all the multitude, the crowd who have gone to see Cleopatra, Shakespeare imagines even the air going to praise, to watch Cleopatra, and leaving a vacancy, leaving a vacuum around Antony. It's as if all the power of the imperial throne that Antony is sitting on has been sucked away by the beauty and allure of Cleopatra. A little later down the same page of Plutarch, there's a marginal note, Cleopatra's beauty, in which Plutarch tells us that her beauty was not so passing as unmatchable of other women, nor yet such as upon present view did enamour men with her, but so sweet was her company and conversation that a man could not possibly but be taken. So it's not only her physical beauty. Plutarch suggests her physical beauty isn't in fact all that much greater than anybody else's, but her charm, her conversation is what draws everybody in. And this is, of course, what we see every time that Antony thinks he can pull himself away from her and go back to Rome, go back to his military and political duty. Her conversation, her charm, her wit, her sexiness draws him back. He is completely entangled by her. In that image of her being like the goddess Venus, we perhaps remember the classical myth of how Mars, the god of war, was trapped in a net by Venus, the goddess of love. The battle between love and war, desire and duty, the personal and the political, is at the heart of Antony and Cleopatra.